I want you to hit me as hard as you can.
Hey everybody, it's Chris Bumry here again for JOBLO.com with another video edition of The Good, the Bad, and the Badass. And this week, we're taking a look at the iconic Harrison Ford. Now, Harrison Ford is 77 years old, but if his appearance on Jimmy Kimmel this week is to be believed, he's going to be playing Indiana Jones once again this summer, and I guess at 77 years old, probably 78 or 79 by the time the movie actually hits theaters, he's going to maybe be the oldest action hero of all time. But you know what? He's Harrison Ford. He's still rugged. And if anybody could do it, he can. And it's hard to overestimate the effect that Harrison Ford has had on people of my generation. In fact, film fans in general for probably the last, 50 years or so.
Get off my plane.
No one can ever really make an honest argument that Harrison Ford isn't probably the greatest cinematic hero of our time. I mean, some of you may not quite agree, and definitely some strong cases can be made for a lot of other people, but Harrison Ford is not only Han Solo, but he's also Indiana Jones and Jack Ryan. So that would be like somebody being James Bond, Batman, and Jason Bourne for good measure. It's nuts, yet Harrison Ford not only pulled it all off, but he managed to make each character pretty distinct. Now, it was a little bit sad that Harrison Ford seemed to kind of resent the Han Solo character, with him usually grumpy whenever it was brought up in interviews. That said, his attitude on the character seems to have softened a lot in recent years, with him showing up in The Force Awakens and him even putting in a last-minute cameo in The Rise of Skywalker. Although, I guess at this point, if J.J. Abrams calls, you go, even if you're Harrison Ford. Han Solo, is the character I think that we all kind of wanted to be whenever we watched Star Wars. People maybe liked Luke Skywalker, they liked Leia, they liked Chewie, of course. Everybody kind of thought Lando was kind of smooth, but, when we played dress up, everybody used to always fight over who got to play Han Solo, because, you know what, he's the coolest. He may not be a Jedi, but yeah, you want to be Han Solo. That said, Han Solo, while great, is nothing compared to Indiana Jones. And luckily, Harrison Ford seems to have genuine affection for that character, with him constantly going on record saying that it's one of his favorite parts and that he'd be happy to throw on the fedora and pick up the bullwhip at a moment's notice, and indeed, it looks like he's still going to be doing it. Make no mistake, while guys like Chris Pratt or even Chris Pine, who Harrison Ford made a dig at this week, have their names thrown about as potential Indiana Joneses, there's only ever going to really be one Indiana Jones, and it's Harrison Ford.
Who would you like to see as Indiana Jones?
Nobody is going to be Indiana Jones.
Ever.
Don't you get it?
No one.
I'm Indiana Jones.
So when you're gone, it's gone.
When I'm gone, he's gone. It's easy.
What's also worth recognizing is that even outside of his action hero icon mode, Harrison Ford has had a great career. I mean, Blade Runner, which was a huge flop in 1982, is now regarded as one of the greatest films ever made. And coincidentally, it's also a movie that Ford always seemed to have a complicated relationship with him and director Ridley Scott kind of arguing and going back and forth over the years of whether or not Deckard was a replicant or not. Harrison Ford always seemed to think that he was not a replicant. Ridley Scott seemed to think that he was. Even the recent sequel, Blade Runner 2049, didn't, in my opinion, answer the question definitively. But I have to say, Harrison Ford was able to pull off Deckard pretty well despite being in his 70s at the time, and you know what? He doesn't look all that different than he did 20 years ago, so maybe it's not too hard to believe that he could play Indiana Jones again. But outside of those roles too, as I said, he's had an amazing career. He's been highly proficient at drama with movies like The Mosquito Coast and Regarding Henry, terrific at romance such as Working Girl, and his bread and butter outside of the action genre seem to be thrillers with Presumed Innocent, The Fugitive, and probably one of my favorite movies of his, Witness. He was able to play in these movies everyman heroes that are far more down-to-earth than the larger-than-life characters he's most famous for. Now, the only category that I'd say Harrison Ford has never really nailed is probably comedy, with Sabrina and Hollywood Homicide being pretty notable flops. But other than that, Ford has pretty much excelled at any kind of genre that he's tried, making him one of the more versatile movie stars out there, and far more versatile than anyone has ever really given him credit for. And I think that that's allowed him a longevity that's nearly unparalleled in this business, unless your name happens to be Clint Eastwood. So as a child of the 80s, when I'm talking about Harrison Ford's greatest role, it's hard for me to choose between Han Solo and Indiana Jones, but gotta give the edge to the more three-dimensional Indiana Jones. In the end, the Star Wars saga was not Han Solo's journey, but the Indiana Jones films are Harrison Ford's movies through and through, even if they tried to kind of make it Shia LaBeouf's movie in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. That's the one of the movies I kind of try to forget really exists, so let's just call it the Indiana Jones trilogy. Indy really is one of the greatest action heroes of all time, and many, myself included, would believe that after James Bond, he's probably the greatest ever. The trilogy is pretty spectacular, with even the much maligned Temple of Doom being something of a classic in my book. But for my money, Raiders of the Lost Ark stands as perhaps the greatest action-adventure movie ever put to celluloid, and Ford's deeply human but incredibly heroic Indy is the key to his success. He's the greatest, and I sincerely hope that he does come back for another Indiana Jones movie. And you know what else would be cool, even though it's definitely not going to happen? How great would it be to see Sean Connery again as Henry Jones? I mean, Sean Connery is ancient at this point and seems very, very, very happily retired, but man, I mean, I just wish they would do something to bring him in there. I don't know, have him just show up like for a second. Be really cool. Oh well.
Dad! Oh, Dad! Oh, Dad! What?
When it comes to Harrison Ford's most underrated films, I would say that even though it was kind of a box office hit and gave him his only Oscar nomination to date, Witness to me still feels relatively obscure among Harrison Ford's films for younger fans. Everybody always talks about Indiana Jones and Han Solo and The Fugitive and even kind of Jack Ryan, but I mean, Witness is top shelf Harrison Ford. It's one of the best things he's ever done, and his performance as the conflicted John Book, who takes refuge among the Amish, is spectacular. Ford's rarely been this vulnerable, and while he still is pretty effective in action hero mode, there's some really cool action scenes in this movie, including a really nifty showdown with the villains at the end. It's the drama and the romance that really makes the film resonate so much. Director Peter Weir is on par with Steven Spielberg as one of those guys who really knows how to play to all of Ford's strengths, and it's too bad that they haven't paired up since their Witness follow-up, the poorly received but also really, really underrated The Mosquito Coast. Also, the scene where he beats up that tourist that's making fun of the Amish is probably the most badass thing that he ever did. But when it comes to overrated films, I have to say, I was kind of horrified when Warner Brothers launched an Oscar campaign for him following his turn as Branch Rickey in 42. Now, I actually thought that was a pretty good Jackie Robinson movie with Chadwick Boseman, becoming a pretty big star after it came out. But Ford, I don't know. He was really chewing scenery as Ricky. I mean, it felt like more of a caricature than a totally legit performance. But then again, the movie was a pretty big hit and actually one of Harrison Ford's biggest hits outside of Star Wars in some time. So I don't know. What do I know?
It may not be a sufficient reply.
The thing is, if Ford was to really throw himself into a part these days and work with a top-notch director, I know he could probably deliver, and that's why I'm kind of excited to hear that he's going to actually be doing a series based on this crazy Netflix documentary called The Staircase, where he's going to play a villain, but I mean, it's a juicy role if you've seen that, and I think that Ford, if he really, really, really tries his best, could knock it out of the park and might go down as one of his definitive roles, but we'll see. Now, when it comes to Harrison Ford's most memorable scene, there are a couple for me that fit the bill. One of them is in Raiders of the Lost Ark when he beats up that hulking Nazi in the airplane hangar and the Nazi takes a propeller to the face. I mean, I think that's an insane part, and I love the way that Harrison Ford throws a punch with those amazing sound effects. But if we were to talk about Harrison Ford's most iconic scene, unfortunately it's the scene that's been screwed with the most by George Lucas. It's the Han shoots Greedo scene, and yes folks, Han shoots first. Now, here comes the fun part. Let's count down Harrison Ford's 10 best films, and I'll tell you, there are so many amazing movies here that I had to cheat and double up on some of these. So, here we go. Number 10 is The Fugitive. It would be higher, but I kind of think of it as a Tommy Lee Jones movie.
I didn't kill my wife! I don't care!
Number 9 is a tie between Patriot Games and Clear and Present Danger. Patriot Games has more action, but Clear and Present Danger probably has a better storyline and a better ensemble. Number 8 is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which has probably my favorite child sidekick of all time, Short Round. Number 7 is Return of the Jedi. A lot of people don't like this movie. I like this movie, and you know what? I like the Ewoks too. Number 6 is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Great Indiana Jones movie. Sean Connery, amazing as Henry Jones. Seeing James Bond and Indiana Jones team up is just an insane thing. Number 5 is Witness, masterpiece. Number 4, Blade Runner. Number 3, Star Wars. Number 2, Empire Strikes Back. And number 1, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Now, up next for Harrison Ford is The Call of the Wild, which pairs him up with a CGI dog. So, I have a feeling that this is not going to stick very close to Jack London's original, which has a crazy violent and crazy grim ending that I'm sure Disney is not too keen to put into the film, but you know what? It looks kind of fun. Harrison Ford seems to be having a good time, and I'm looking forward to seeing it, and I think it'll probably be one of his bigger grossing movies in a while, although not sure it's going to be a massive hit either, especially going up against Sonic, which seems to have taken the country by storm in a weird way. And of course, there's gonna hopefully be an Indiana Jones 5, but hopefully he's solo on this one and doesn't get another sidekick. As much as I like Shia LaBeouf, I want to see an Indiana Jones movie. Until next time, everybody, I'm Chris Bumbray. Go watch a cool Harrison Ford movie tonight. There's a lot to choose from.